Hi, my name's Rich, and today we're going to be going through all the different classes and deciding which one to choose. You've just started playing and you can't decide on a class yet, so where do you begin? So, starting out, you have your frontline fighters. One of the best examples is the Barbarian. It has high hit points. The Barbarian can rage, which gives it extra attacks and extra damage, and it's one of the tankiest characters you can get. Also, you don't need to wear armor. You have natural resistance to things, and it's just really dangerous in combat. Out of combat, they're not so smart, and they lack some of the social graces that other classes have, but if you think this is appealing, then go for it. The Bard is a charismatic spellcaster who's able to heal and is able to fight in hand-to-hand combat. They're a jack of all trades and they have great skill sets, they have great melee combat, they can cast spells at range, they can help buff up your party and deal area of effect damage. They're good at all things but not great at one thing. So this makes a great class for someone that's joining the party late and just wants to help improve an already well-rounded party. The Cleric is one of the best healers in the game. If you choose the Cleric class, you'll have ability to get some decent armor AC, you can focus on casting spells, and you're okay in hand-to-hand combat as well. You can take a couple of hits and normally you'll be hiding behind the Barbarian or the Fighter, still attacking and dealing damage, but also healing up the party. You're kind of going to be mothering the rest of the party and making sure they have the packed lunches and juice boxes. Now the Druid can be played as a healer, but generally speaking the Druid's main focus is the beast form ability. They can transform into another creature, and they have a great array of spells, a lot of unique spells that are only in the Druid class. A lot of the subclasses diverge on this trope, but Druids are a little bit fragile compared to the Cleric or the Fighter, but they're one of the toughest caster classes we can get. Now the Fighter doesn't have any magical abilities, especially at low levels unless you choose specific subclasses, but the Fighter is great at getting in, dealing damage and taking damage. The Fighter has the second highest amount of hit points, the Barbarian being the first, but the main difference is the Fighter gets access to Action Surge at level 2, which lets you have 2 actions once every long rest. I would recommend that every party has at least one Fighter in there. They're a great class at earlier levels, but at later levels their power gets outshined by classes like the Sorcerer and Wizard. The Monk is a very controversial class because it's a melee class, it can have great mobility, it can scoot in and out of combat, it doesn't have to wear armor but it still has high defense and can be a tank of sorts. But the main controversy with the Monk is the level 5 ability Stunning Strike. Some people say it's completely overpowered, but I think that if you take the Stunning Strike away from the Monk, it would ruin the whole subclass and really change the identity of it. Monks themselves are focusing on dexterity and they are unparalleled in moving around the field. The Paladin is a holy warrior and they are great at taking damage, and they have an ability to heal party members as well, and naturally baked into this class. They do have spells of sorts, but their main focus is on the smite ability, being able when they land an attack to deal extra damage, and this is probably the best way to use most of your spell slots. I'd say the Paladin, similar to the Bard, is a good all-rounder, but generally speaking the Paladin is more of a fighter class than anything else. The Ranger has high hit points and focuses on having 2 weapons at the same time, two-handed combat, or using their bow and arrow to shoot from afar. The Ranger's main abilities focus on different terrain and dealing extra damage to specific types of monsters. The Ranger does have a great array of spells, but they don't have any cantrips as they're classed as a half caster. A lot of people say the Ranger is the weakest class of the whole game, but I think that with a DM that's willing to accommodate a Ranger playing at the board, there should be no problem in picking one. You should go with something you want to enjoy. You shouldn't listen too much about what's the strongest and weakest class mechanically. The Rogue focuses on stealth and agility and is able to backstab. If they land an attack, once a turn they can deal massive damage to this one creature. They're also very good at their skills and abilities, and they can lockpick things, sneak around, and a great addition to any group. The Rogue can also disarm traps, and some subclasses have spells with them as well. The Sorcerer is a caster class, which focuses on casting spells, and they can be a little bit fragile, but they have great access to lots of different skills. They're one of the more complicated classes, so if you're planning to play a Sorcerer, you need to really do your homework to make use of all of its abilities. The Warlock is a class that is the other side of the coin to the Wizard. With the Warlock, you make a pact with a very powerful being and get granted abilities from them. Mechanically, it focuses more on cantrips that you can use again and again without using a spell slot, which is good because you only have 2 spell slots until you hit level 10. With the exception of one subclass, they can't heal, so they're definitely more focused on dealing damage, area of effect spells, and social manipulation. The Wizard is one of the most powerful classes in the game. It can be very fragile earlier on at low levels, but as soon as you get to level 5, you have access to things like Counterspell, Fireball, and loads of great powerful spells. The Wizard themselves memorize all of their spells in a spellbook, so you can add extra spells as your story comes along, but you have to be aware that the Wizard does not generally go into the front lines of combat and starts hitting people with their stick. Stay at the back and try to avoid combat. The Wizards stereotypically are a very nerdy class to take, and this is reflecting in the player as well, because the player must know all of the spells and abilities, and it's a lot of homework, but when it gets done right, it's a fantastically fun class to play. If you're interested in some of the subclasses you can pick for these classes, then check out the links in the description below. I've got about 50 subclass videos recorded at the moment, and I'm sure there'll be a flavour for everybody. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And I've also going to link in the comments the basic rule set that's free to download from Dungeons & Dragons from Wizards of the Coast, and if you go through that, chapter 2 has a brief set of rules for the basic classes and the basic races. So if you want to try and create a party without buying any of the books, then this is a great place to go. If you want to help out the channel and download a free subclass for the fighter, then go over to my Patreon. The fighter subclass is called the Mentor. It's pretty cool and you can check it out for free if you go over to the Patreon. But I'm also making, for $10 and more patrons, a different unique subclass every month. And the only way you can get these is through the Patreon. And that will help support the channel as well. So yeah, thanks for watching and I'll speak to you next time. Bye.